Hi everyone! Welcome dito sa another lesson natin ng vector analysis. So for this lesson, we'll talk about product of vectors. So in particular, we will discuss the scalar product. So in the last meeting, uh, we solved for the components of a vector and then basic operations like addition, subtraction, and vector scaling. So ngayon naman, we'll be discussing scalar product. Ano ba tong scalar product and its properties? And then we'll solve some problems for us to um, explore yung properties ng scalar product. So, let's start. So, as an introduction, let us define a scalar product. A scalar product of two vectors, vector A and vector V, is denoted as A dot B and is defined as the product of the magnitudes of vectors A and B and the cosine of the smaller angle between vectors A and B. So if we are going to represent it mathematically, ganito yung itsura niya. So A dot B is equal to the magnitude ng A times the magnitude ng B times the cosine of the smaller angle between A and B. So again, meron tayong dot na ginagamit natin to represent na ito ay scalar product or also known as the dot product. Then we have the magnitudes ng dalawang vector. So in the last meeting, alam na natin kung paano kukunin yung magnitudes na yan, right? And then we have the smaller angle between these two vectors. Ayan. So pakitandaan yung formula or definition natin na yan. Okay? So to illustrate, meron tayong dalawang vectors and then meron tayong angle between them. So yun yung dinidefine or dinidescribe ng scalar product. Okay. So yung projection ng isang vector doon sa vector, sa pang vector, ito yan. Tinatawag natin projection of vector B along or in the direction of vector A. Okay, so pag-usapan natin yan mamaya. So bago yon, let's discuss ano ba yung mga properties ng dot product. So first property, for angles between 0 to 90 degrees, yung scalar product daw natin is positive. So makikita naman natin yan dito. No? Habang lumalapit siya sa 90 degrees, magiging 0 siya. Pero pag mas maliit sa 90, positive value siya. So, 0, positive value siya pag yung angle natin is between 0 and 90. Okay? So, next, for angles above 90 degrees, yung scalar product naman natin is negative. So, that's another way of checking kung ang sagot natin sa scalar product is tama o mali. Pag nakakuha tayo ng scalar product na negative, dapat ang angle na makukuha rin natin should be greater than 90 as presented in this illustration. Next property, if angle is exactly 90 degrees or if we have perpendicular vectors, then the scalar product is 0. Okay? Number 3, pakitandaan, if the angle between these two vectors is 90 degrees or if the vectors are perpendicular to each other, the scalar product is 0. Yan. Kitang-kita naman dito sa ating illustration. Okay? So, yung ating dot product nasa 0 and then yung angle niyan is 90 degrees. Fourth, if the angle between them is 0 or if the vectors are perpendicular, the scalar product is simply the product of their magnitudes. Okay? So, ayan, 0 pagka 90, ah, yeah, scalar product is 0 kapag angle is 90, and then scalar product is the product of the magnitude if uh, the angle is 0 or parallel vectors. Fifth, the magnitude of the dot product is always less than or equal to the product of the magnitudes ng dalawang vector na yan. Okay? So, yan yung fifth na pang-check natin. So, always na uh, mas maliit or hindi lalagpas dun sa product ng magnitude ng mga vectors yung ating dot product. 6, another property ng dot product is that it is commutative and distributive. So when we say commutative, yan, pwedeng baliktarin. Kapag distributive, pwede natin distribute sa mga parentheses. So same pa rin yung ating result niyan kapag ganyan. Pakitandaan number 6, the scalar product is commutative and distributive. And lastly, the product can be viewed as the product of the magnitude of vector A and the magnitude of the projection of vector B on A. So, ano itsura niyan? Sabi daw dyan, dahil nga may property tayo ng distributive and commutative, that product can be viewed as the projection, so, of the first vector and the magnitude of the projection of vector B on A. So, pwede raw nating masabi na yung dot product of A and B, A dot B, is equal to the magnitude ng A times nung projection ng B sa A. Okay? So, magnitude times the projection. Yun yung ating scalar product or dot product. Okay? So, pakitandaan lang itong mga properties na ito dahil magagamit natin yan when we solve yung mga dot product or scalar products. Okay? So there's another way in which we can get or derive the formula for the scalar product of two vectors given their components. Okay? So paano yan? So consider we have this dot product. We have two vectors, vector A and vector B, are represented by their components in the x, y, and z axis. So, ganyan ang itsura ng dot product nila. So, ito yung A, tapos dot, ito naman yung B. So, sabi natin, yung ating dot product or a property of the dot product is that it is commutative and distributive. So, paano natin ito i-solve? I-distribute natin kada isa yung mga terms. Okay, so, yun yung property ng dot product. So, first natin, i-distribute natin yung A sub x. Okay, so, first natin, itong term na to, x hat, A sub x, i-multiply natin dito, or ito-dot product natin dito. So, ito na yung result niyan. Next, ito namang first term and then to second term. Ito na yan. And then, yung first term to the third term, ito na yan. So, gagawin natin yung step na yan sa y and sa z. So, sa y naman, ito yung kanyang tsura. Okay? So, y hat dot x hat, then product ng kanilang magnitudes. So, z naman, ganun din. Z hat A sub c dot x hat B sub x. Then, meron din sa y, and then meron din sa z. Now, let's go back doon sa property ng dot product that says that if the vectors are perpendicular, the scalar product is 0. So in this case, meron tayong mga components na perpendicular, right? So tulad ng itong x hat dot y hat, mapapansin natin ito ay perpendicular. So yan ay magiging 0. Another one, itong x hat and then z hat. Another one, y hat dot x hat. Then itong z hat dot x hat. Then z hat dot y hat. So lahat ng may bilog na to, they will become 0 kasi nga perpendicular vectors yung mga yan, and the scalar product of perpendicular vectors is 0. So ang matitira na lang pala sa atin itong tatlo, di ba? Because hindi yan mga perpendicular vectors. Therefore, yung ating dot product will be x hat dot x hat a sub x b sub x plus y hat dot y hat a sub y b sub y plus z hat dot z hat a sub z b sub z. Now, the fourth property na diniscuss din natin kanina is that if the vectors are in parallel, so same sila nung kanyang axis or axis, the scalar product is the product ng kanilang magnitude. So in this case, ang magnitude ng x hat is 1. Ang magnitude naman ng x hat na isa pa ulit is a sub x, b sub x. So para mangyari, itong ating x hat, x dot x hat magiging 1. Ito rin magiging 1 na rin to at ito rin magiging 1. Therefore, ang ating formula ng dot product given yung ating mga coefficients or yung magnitudes ng ating mga components is equal to the product of the coefficient ng kada component. Okay, so that will be yung x i-multiply yung x scalar component i-multiply natin plus yung sa y i-multiply din natin, then sa z i-multiply din natin. So that's another way to get or to solve for the dot product ng dalawang vectors. Well, anyway, again, let me just define kung ano yung scalar product ng dalawang vectors a and b. It is the product of the magnitudes of vector a and b and the cosine of the smaller angle between the vectors a and b. So, ayan. So, let's go on to this solved problem. So, consider we have two vectors given as vector a is equal to x hat plus y hat 5 minus z hat, and then another vector b is equal to negative x hat plus y hat 5 plus z hat. So yan yung dalawa nating vectors. Now we are going to find first the angle between the two vectors, these two vectors, and the projection of vector A onto vector B. Then C, the vector component of A in the direction of B. So yan tatlo yung sasagutan natin. Okay? So first, dun muna tayo sa finding the angle between the two vectors. Ito medyo madali ito dahil diniscuss na natin ito kanina. So paano yan? Na-discuss na natin kanina yung formula ng or definition ng scalar product. It is the product of the magnitudes of the two vectors and the cosine of the smaller angle between them. So, yun yung formula na gagamitin natin to get the angle between these two vectors. Now, in this formula, we can derive, okay? So, mamanipulate lang natin. We can now derive for the angle between these two vectors equivalent to the arc cosine of the dot product A dot B divided by the product of their magnitudes. So, para masagot natin yung angle between them, kailangan palang isolve muna natin yung dot product mismo ng dalawang vector na yun. And then kung kailangan natin kunin yung kanilang respective magnitudes, right? And then, pag nakuha na natin yung mga yon, isa-substitute natin pabalik dito para makuha yung angle between them. So, yun yung ating approach. Okay? So, we know that the dot product ng dalawang vectors, given their components in the x, y, and z axis, has the formula na katulad nito. Okay? Kaya naman, gagamitin natin to, then we'll substitute yung mga coefficients ng dalawang vectors. So sa A, ganito yan. 1. So dahil yung coefficient ng x is 1, so 1 na yan. Sa B naman, negative 1 plus sa y ulit, 5 positive. Sa B naman, positive 5 din. Then sa Z, negative 1. Ito yan. Then sa Z naman ng B, positive 1. So, i-multiply lang natin yan and then isa-sum natin. So, makukuha nating dot product is 23. So, dot product pala nitong dalawang vectors na to is 23. Next, we are going to solve for the magnitude ng kada vector. So, ito naman is straightforward. It is the magnitude ng A, vector A, is equal to the square root of 1 squared plus 5 squared plus negative 1 squared. And it is equal to the square root of 27. So, since parehas lang yung gagawin natin sa B, nagkataon naman na the magnitude ng V or ng B is equal to the square root of 27 din. Now, we already have yung ating mga kailangan numbers para ma-solve yung ating angle in between vectors A and B. So, isa-substitute na lang natin yan ulit dun sa ating formula that will become the angle between A and B is equal to the arc cosine 23 divided by the square root of 27 times the square root of 27. And in degrees, it is equal to 31.586 degrees. Okay, so yan yung angle between these two vectors. So yung mga ibang sagot natin dito, nakuha natin, gagamitin pa natin yan doon sa mga susunod na questions. Okay? Next, we're going to find the projection of vector A onto vector B. So, yan, balikan lang natin yung illustration natin doon sa simula. Okay? So, ibig sabihin kasi ng projection ng vector A to vector B, hinahanap natin yung component ng vector A na nakalapat dun sa direction ng vector A. So ang formula niyan is simply A cosine ng angle. So, parang kinukuha lang natin yung cosine niya. No? So, para makuha natin yun, gagamitin natin ulit yung formula natin ng dot product that is equal to magnitude ng A times the magnitude ng B times the cosine ng angle in between them. So, ang kailangan kasi natin dito sa particular question na to is the projection of vector A. So, that means it is the A cosine phi. So, it is equal to the dot product ng dalawa divided by the magnitude na ng B. So, yan yung pagkuha ng projection ng vector A onto vector B. So, since kanina nasagutan na natin yung A dot B and yung mga magnitudes and angles, sulat ko lang yan dito para lang magagamit natin. Okay? Therefore, yung formula natin ng projection of vector A onto vector B becomes 23, yan yung ating dot product, 23, divided by the square root of 27, yan naman yung magnitude ni B. It is now equal to 4.426. Yan yung kanyang projection or yung magnitude ng projection ng vector A sa vector B. Another way to compute is to simply use the angle na nakuha natin dun sa una natin sinolve and yung magnitude ng A. Kasi yun naman talaga yung formula ng projection. Therefore, ang sagot natin dyan should be also equal dun sa kanina. No? That will be 4.26. Okay, so sana nakakasunod pa. So let's go on to the next question. We are required to find the vector component of A in the direction of B. So ibig sabihin, the vector component naman, ang sagot dito should be in vector. Nahanap natin yung vector component na A na nakalapat dun sa direction of B. In other words, yung nasolve natin kaninang projection, which is a magnitude, okay, or scalar quantity, kailangan maging vector. So we will multiply it doon sa direction, right? So paano ba yan? The vector component of A in the direction of B is denoted by this symbol A sub B. In other words, yung A, yan yung tumutukoy doon sa vector component ng A, and that should describe yung ating magnitude. Okay. So in this case, it is A cosine of the angle between these two vectors. And then yung B, nasa subscript, it indicates na in the direction of B. Okay? Now, when we say in the direction of B, we are going to use the unit vector ng B na yon. Okay? And simply, it will be the B hat na gagamitin natin. Okay? Therefore, the vector component of A in the direction of B is equal to B hat times yung ating magnitude A cosine of the angle between these two vectors. So, yan yung ating gagamitin para ma-solve natin yung vector component of A in the direction of B. Palagi natin tatandaan kung ano yung mga words na ginagamit para sa pag-solve din ng ibang mga problems, di ba? So, yan. Sinulat ko lang dito sa tabi yung formula natin na gagamitin. Ready na tayo ngayon mag-substitute ng mga values. So, alam natin kanina na nakuha na natin yung magnitude or yung projection of vector A onto vector B equal to 27 over the square root of 27. Pero wala pa tayong B hat. Tama ba? We all know that the unit vector of a vector is equal to the vector divided by its magnitude. So, yung B, yung vector B, negative x hat plus y hat 5 plus z hat all over the square root of 27. Para makuha natin yung vector component A in the direction of B, i-multiply natin yung 23 over the square root of 27 doon sa ating B hat. So, ito na nga yung itsura niya. Okay. So now, i-distribute lang natin itong 23 over 27 sa kada term. So, ano mangyayari? Multiply natin yung 23 over square root of 27 sa mga coefficients ng ating kada term. So, ayan. So, ang sagot natin will be negative x hat. So, dito 23 divided by, dahil naka-square root yan, so, para mag-cancel out yung square root, magiging 27. Okay? Plus y hat, 5 times 23 is 115 divided by 27 ulit. Plus z hat, that is 1 times 23 all over 27. So, yan yung ating magiging sagot doon sa vector component ng A na nasa direction naman ng B. We can also solve this question by using only the coefficients ng ating given. Kanina kasi, sinolve natin yon by using yung mga nakuha nating sagot like yung angle, di ba? So in this case, we will try to solve this question C by using only the given. So let's go back to the definition ng ating um, sum or scalar vector. The dot product is equal to the product ng magnitudes ng dalawang vectors times the cosine ng smaller angle between them. And we all know na yung ating projection, di ba? Yung projection sa direction ng vector B is equal to the dot product divided by the magnitude ng saan direction. In this case, it's in the direction of B. So, para makuha natin yung vector component of A in the direction of B, itong nakuha nating projection, right? I-multiply lang natin yun sa B hat. Okay? Although, yung ating B hat, kaya pa natin i-breakdown yan into B over the magnitude ng B. So, yan. Ito, mga basic na symbols. We can now simplify yung ating formula into yan, ganito. So, sabi dito, yung vector component daw ng A in the direction of B is equal to B times the dot product of A and B all over uh, the magnitude of B squared. So paano yan? Yung ating B, di ba? Ito na yan. Minus x plus y hat 5 plus z. Then, makukuha na rin natin yung ating magnitude. And then, kaya-kaya naman din natin isolve yung ating dot product. So, ayan. Sinubstitute ko na muna para sa inyo in terms ng kanilang symbols. So, color coding tayo Itong blue, yan yung ating dot product. And then, itong dalawang red, ito yung mga black dito. Nilalagyan ko ng pula yung ang pagka-vector, kinukulayan ko yan ng pula. Pero kapag coefficient siya or number or something na hindi related do sa vector, itim lang siya or ibang kulay. So, para mas madali. Ayan. So, once na meron na tayong formula para sa pagkuha ng vector component in the direction of another vector, substitute lang natin yung ating mga given na vectors. Yan. So, therefore, sagot na natin. Yan. Simplify muna natin yung ating dot product, 23 na yan. Tapos yung denominator, 27 na yan. So, simplify pa natin. Ito na yung ating sagot. 23 over 27. Then sa gitna, 115 over 27. Then sa pangatlo, 23 over 27. So, that's it. Yan na yung ating discussion ng scalar product. I hope meron kayong natutunan dito sa discussion natin about scalar products and its properties. Then kung paano na-derive yung talagang ginagamit natin na formula. So, dinerive na rin natin. We also solved an example problem. Meron tatlong tanong doon. So, that covers yung paggamit ng mga properties ng dot product. Okay. So, on the next meeting, we'll be discussing naman yung isa pang product of vectors, which is the vector or the cross product. Okay? So, ngayon kasi dot product and then doon naman cross product. So, iba rin yung approach natin doon. So, palagi nyo lang tatandaan kung paano natin sinosolve yung mga problem. Okay? With that, I would end my presentation and thank you. See you next meeting.